that'd be great. The first half of this session is going to be more of a talk bit and an update about what's going on in 4 nations relating to horticulture. But then I'm planning to workshop the second half and really get you to be thinking about how we can get the key messages in horticulture across 4 nations across to MPs. So this is going to be more of an active session. So I'm hoping that you're all aware of the report that Landworkers Alliance launched at the Oxford Real Farming Conference in January. So it's been out in the world a few months now, but if you haven't seen it yet, I've got a few copies of the full report which we're selling here, and also some shortened versions which I can give away, which are just there. So I'm here with Joe Hunt from Scotland, who's going to talk in a little bit, and Tony Little, Tony's not here yet, but hopefully he'll be here soon to do an update. Oh, if you know where he is, thanks.
I don't.
I
just found him.
Oh, you found him. Brilliant.
He's on his way.
Okay, thank you. So in the meantime, I'll just give you a very, very brief rundown of what's in the report. But this isn't a talk about what's in the report. It's more of an update about what's been happening since the report was launched, and to let you know what we're doing, but mainly to really try and galvanise everyone to think about what we can do to get this message and the messages to land about how we need many, many, many more agroecological growers across all 4 nations. So, yes, just in brief, the report looks at how we can substitute for 20% of the value of the imported vegetables. At the moment, you're probably aware that we import about 46% of vegetables by value that we eat in the UK, and we're eating far, far less. Only 77% of adults are not eating the recommended 5 a day in the Eat Well recommendations. Sorry, I think I probably told you the wrong place to come, Tony, so that's my fault. Yes, we're all here, all is good. So what we're aiming to do with the vision that we put out in this report is to increase agroecological and organic horticulture production around all 4 nations, so that 20% of what we spend at the moment on imports is spent instead on agroecological vegetables, produced according to the food zones model, which in short is having a mixture of urban, peri-urban and rural production around every city in the UK, supplemented by additional production from other rural areas, but really aiming for about 60% of production to come from the urban, peri-urban and rural areas, so that there are many, many more organic and agroecological growers in the UK, and looking at a mixture of selling through farmer-focused routes to market, so a mixture of box schemes, CSAs, food hubs, and also public procurement, so that every primary school child in the UK would have 2 portions of vegetables with every school meal. So we've done the number crunching, which is in the report, which looks at how that can be achieved. And there's already a lot of great work going on. Tony's going to talk a bit about the Welsh Veg into Schools scheme. So since we launched this report, I should have introduced myself at the beginning. I'm Rebecca Laughton, who's the Horticulture Campaigns Coordinator at Landworkers Alliance, and we've been working hard advocating for organic and agroecological growers. We now get to have a quarterly meeting with the DEFRA Hawk team to put these ideas to them. And one of the ideas that we've been pushing a lot in the last year is the idea of having a market garden startup kit grant. Because at the moment, as you're probably aware, there's the Future Farm, the Farm Equipment and Technology Fund, which is extremely restrictive and really not very helpful to most small-scale growers because it's very focused on innovative equipment. And actually, you can only buy kit that's on their list, and I think there are about 2 or 3 things that are of use to growers. There's a paper seed planter and a couple of other things, but they're not really geared up for the kind of basic kit that people need. So what we're really pushing for is to have a grant or at least a loan or a matched funding grant. And it would be interesting if, we're not going to go into a discussion particularly about that, but to hear what people favour about whether it should be a grant to pay for things like polytunnels, fencing, crop covers, propagation equipment, tractors, rotavators, all of those sorts of things that you need to just start up, and then replicating what they have in Wales, having a market garden development grant for additional kit that you might need to scale up. So the other thing that we've been working on a lot in the last few months in England is planning, which, as I'm sure you're all aware, the new government announced quite some dramatic changes to the planning system, and the consultation period for the National Planning Policy Framework is already closed. And so we submitted our responses to that, looking at all the different things that could be changed to actually make the planning system more supportive for agroecological growers and actually also low impact developers in general. And the other thing that we've done is we've produced this briefing for MPs, which is very much something targeted for English, but it could actually probably be used in the Welsh and the Scottish and the Northern Irish context. But I've got quite a few copies of this, and if people want to come and take it, to use it to take to their MPs. What I'm really hoping this session is going to achieve is that people are really thinking about how they can contact their new or their newly elected or existing MP that's been re-elected, and really start sowing some of the ideas of what is needed for agroecological horticulture. So, to use a growing metaphor, what I'm hoping we can achieve over the next year or two is that we can start sowing the seeds of many of these ideas with our MPs and MSPs and various, and also local councils, to try and persuade them that agroecological horticulture and organic horticulture has many of the answers for health, environment, addressing climate change, addressing labour issues. And so this planning briefing sets out why organic and agroecological horticulture meets with many of the labour objectives, and then what the planning barriers are to agroecological horticulture and what the tweaks to the planning system would be that could really make things much easier. So this is one of the actions, and if you want to come and get one of these booklets at the end, that would be great. The other thing I wanted to just alert everyone to that we produced, actually in response for the horticulture workshop at our last AGM, is we produced a two-side sheet on how to host a farm visit, and also a sort of campaigning fact kit for people who want to help with the horticulture campaign. But in particular, the how to host a farm visit leaflet, which is just here. You can download this from our website, and it's basically got some of the key points that you might want to include, or guidance about how to really get your message to land, things that you could do if you were to invite your MP or local councillors to your farm. But there's nothing really like going to actually see a farm in action. I think probably we're at the tail end of the season when it's a good idea to do it this year, but now is the time to really be thinking about if you want to host a farm visit next year. I mean, you might, if you're quick, and I think sometimes you can just contact your MP and they might be open to coming on a farm visit quite soon. And October, things are still looking pretty good. November, they're starting to look a little bit bleak. And but if you've got some good crops that are still going in November or even December, that might actually be even more impressive for getting an MP out there to look at them. But yes, have a think about whether this is something you could do this autumn or just start planning for next year. And yes, you can look on our publications part of the website to find this. So I'm going to invite Joe and then Tony to just, Northern Ireland, I just need to do a little update on that. So we now have a fledgling member, we've got a member organiser in Northern Ireland, and they've been actually really active over the last year. The particular thing that they've been doing is putting out a proposal for a new entrance scheme for horticulture in Northern Ireland, and they've been contacting their new Agriculture Minister, Andrew Muir, and he was invited to a farm visit at Helens Bay Organic, which is quite a big, long-established organic farm in Northern Ireland. That happened in early September, and I think Andrew Muir came on that farm visit, and then they also met him at the equivalent of Groundswell, which is called Fields Good in Northern Ireland. So there's a good dialogue that's already happening with the Agriculture Minister about horticulture, agroecological and organic horticulture in Northern Ireland and how to support new entrants. And there's also a group working on creating a position paper and gathering evidence about the benefits of organic horticulture in Northern Ireland to really build the case for a new entrance scheme. So it's really exciting after many years of not having so much activity in Northern Ireland. Things are starting to happen there, and we're really trying to nurture that. So I'm going to invite Joe. Do you want to come up and do a little update about Scotland?
Thanks, Bea. I'm Joe Hunt, organic crofter actually on the farm in the north of Scotland. Well, you can tell I'm not really from north of Scotland. I met somebody who owns a croft in north of Scotland. And Bea is very good at roping me into doing things, basically, and she's done it again, so well done to Bea. So just a quick update on a few things, really. You don't need me to tell you the growing climate has been rather cool this year, but I think the policy climate has been slightly warmer. We've actually, what I've realised this year from a growing point of view is that although our average this year is 0.3 degrees C less than we've had for the last 15 years, it's actually that contains a whole group of really important crops like squash. Last year we had 6,000 squash crops, and this year we've got 0, so it makes you realise you're right on the edge of some of these crops, and even that small percentage difference makes it. But actually the temperature we had this year is actually identical to the running average of 30 years ago, so global warming is allowing us to grow a wider range of crops. But if global warming's a variability, and if we pop back to where we were 30 years ago, we've got a limited range of crops. Anyway, that's the veg side of things. In terms of the people side of things, there's been a lot of good cooperation amongst several different organisations in Scotland, giving a concerted voice to government, which I think has been really useful. So Landgrowers Alliance, Soil Association, Organic Growers Association, Alliance, and Scottish Crofting Federation have come together. Scottish Crofting, there's 20,000 crofts in Scotland, so they have a larger and more historically longer voice than market gardens have, for instance. So I think them joining in with the campaigning for agroecological and small-scale farming is a really useful to present that as one message rather than a separate message. And on the policy front, the Scottish Parliament is now just over 3 years through its 5-year Parliament term, so they're having to get a move on and do all the things that they promised in their 5 years and get on with them. So this year's been a busy policy year. There's been an agriculture bill which has now become an act. So Scotland is going to be a global leader in in sustainable and regenerative farming, and this is largely going to be enabled by carrying on doing exactly the same as what it's been doing for the last 40 years. And we are going to, unfortunately, for the first time, I think, from a policy point of view, we're looking south of the border and thinking of the end of the basic payment scheme is a good thing, but we're still stuck with it in Scotland. So the new bill will be that large farmers will continue to get a basic payment scheme for nothing more than compliance. So that's disappointing, but during the discussion of the lobbying and the campaigning, we presented the small and agroecological view of farming on 3 occasions to the Rural Affairs Committee, and we've had the committee do a full-day tour of several farms. And the word market garden has actually made it into Scottish legislation for the first time since 1892. So that's a good one. So there is now a discussion about farming and profiting and market gardening, which is good. And the next stage of the bill is that it's a framework bill, so it sets the targets. But the next stage of the bill is going to be 5 different sets of statutory instruments. Oh God. 5 different lots of detailed legislation to lobby and present on. But what's interesting is that there's a less favoured area scheme, which is basically a sheep scheme, and there's the suckling beef scheme, which is the cow scheme, and those are going to stay. And we're currently in early stages of discussion of co-design of a fruit and vegetable scheme. So what we're hoping to have is to have, in addition to area-based payments, to have a specific scheme for fruit and vegetable production support in Scotland for the first time, and that's going to predominantly be emphasised for small producers. There's also been a review of the capital scheme, and essentially crofters at the moment get a better deal on historically, because they're wealthier, more of them, and that is likely to be extended to all small farmers across Scotland in equal terms. So that would be really useful as a backup, as an investment support vehicle for all small farmers. And then the final thing to say about policy is that there's also been an additional act passed called the Good Food Nation, which has been watered down considerably during its passage by agribusiness and Scotland Food and Drink, but it's now created a Scottish Food Commission, and the chairman of that was just announced last week, and he's an organic farmer, so I'm hoping that there's some progress. And that new commission is going to take a particular focus on procurement and land access. Are going to be there two areas. So that's just a quick update on what's going. Pretty cool season, but a slightly warmer welcome.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, B. Yeah, I'm Tony Little. I have many roles, but right now I'm representing the Organic Growers Alliance. I think Holly Tomlinson was originally going to do this with the LWA, but got me instead. So talking about Wales, a few things to say. So there's the Sustainable Farming Scheme, the SFS. The Radio 4 recorded a Farming Today programme of the Royal Welsh Show when I was having a bad morning and I couldn't quite get my words out right, and I described it as the FFS, which in fact, there's a certain amount of truth in that. The implementation of the Sustainable Farming Scheme has been put back a year, and that's mostly in response to pushback from farmers and farming unions. We are still waiting for Westminster to decide the Welsh Government budget, so we have nothing really concrete to say about payments, so we're somewhat in abeyance. But I think one of the positive points to take away from that is that they're having a rethink, and that gives us another opportunity to put forward our asks for horticulture. One of those asks I think has already been accepted, and that is that we change the eligibility criteria. So previously it was based on area, 3 hectares, and that excluded a lot of Welsh market gardeners. We've now got an eligibility criteria based on the labour requirement, so you need to do more than 550 hours a year. Every grower in the country manages that by March, so that's really fine. So that's one win. The other thing that we're putting forward is to actually have a horticultural strand of the Sustainable Farming Scheme that speaks directly to the needs of horticulture, particularly small horticulture. And I won't go into detail, but I will say the key thing that we're asking for is that not only the eligibility, but also the payment rates are based on the labour requirement. And that means that actually the horticulture growers are rewarded properly, and levels of payment are appropriate to the amount of environmental benefits that we deliver, but also actually make some kind of financial sense. So in this rethink is basically overseen by a ministerial roundtable group. There's a horticultural representative on that group, not specifically with an organic role, but it's a chap from Lantra that represents horticulture. We have a really good relationship with them, so I am confident that we can get our points across in that way. Moving on perhaps to more positive things, I just want to tell you about a couple of projects that are going on. So there's a project called Future Farms, and this really is the coming together of two issues. It's based in Paris. The Paris County Council has a really, really big council farm estate. So they have about 130 farms, probably an average of 50 acres each. That's a lot of land. And there's a real recognition that publicly owned land is doing very little in terms of public good. So that's the first issue. On the other side, access to land is really, really difficult for horticultural growers, particularly access to land with accommodation on it. And so what the Future Farms project is doing is essentially taking county council farms that are coming at the end of their tendency, carving them up into smaller horticulture units and then making them available to growers. And that's been going on for some time. We're making real progress. We've put in a planning application for which we are still waiting the outcome of, but I think it's going to be fairly positive. And we are already in the process of identifying 3 growers who might take on that. So I think that's a really exciting project. It's also, I think, really pushed things forward in terms of planning policy. So what it's done is it's recognised that there are real difficult challenges for horticultural producers in terms of the planning system. And there's a working group recently established, specifically designed to help growers get what they need. There's a statement of intent, which I think actually carries more weight than the word intent might suggest. I think it's a real thing. I think it's got legs. Part of that is to really look at the technical advice notices. So I'm not an expert in planning, so I'm using words here I don't fully understand. But essentially, what the technical advice guidance does is it sets out the approaches and guidance for the planners about what they should be prioritising, and we have the opportunity to have horticulture being prioritised in the planning system. Yeah, okay, let's move on to that. So so the other, I think the other really exciting thing is a project that is getting organic vegetables into Welsh schools. It's a pilot project. It started 2 years ago just with a single crop, courgettes, with a single local authority. We're now working with 8 growers, and at the moment we're working with 6 local authorities. That I think will go up to 9, I think, next year. There's been some real challenges in it, around communication between growers and intermediaries, communication between councils and growers as to what they actually need. But that's kind of what pilots are for. That's, if you don't experience any problems in your pilot project, you didn't really need it in the first place. So that's really fine. As I say, we're making real progress. It's receiving a lot of attention, both from growers and from councils. So they're looking for funding for the continuation for next year. Given the interest in it, I'm fairly confident that will come about. But yeah, I think that's a really exciting thing. And the really exciting thing about it is that it's the organic certification that has provided the reassurance to councils that we're delivering the public goods that they want to pay for. So that's a really important step forward. And I think I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony and Joe. That was brilliant and really, really good, thorough rundown in the very short time I gave you. We've got time just for a couple of very quick questions before we move on to the workshopping bit to Tony and Joe and me about any of these things we've talked about. So, does anyone have any questions? Yes. Can you speak up, please? Oh, it's called Welsh Veg into Schools. Exactly what it says on the tin. Yes, Julia.
Yeah, I was wondering about the program in Wales where they were splitting up the farms, making smaller units. What kind of people, what's the demographic of the people that are entering horticulture at the moment to take up those farms?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So it is quite a high-profile pilot, and it is really important that the people who come onto those farms are in a position to make a success of it. So what we're looking for is people with at least 2 or 3 years of growing experience, people with the business skills. So the worst thing that can happen is that we get people who are perhaps too early in their growing careers, the whole thing falls apart and everybody looks at it and says, see, told you so, this is not possible. So we're looking, we're really confident. We've had a number of applications, and we've had some fantastic applications, people with, I think, just the right experience. They're young, I think that certainly in terms of the housing, we're planning for the fact that they'll start families, so there's potential in there to extend the housing. So yeah, I think I would say young people, including families, but with already with the level of experience that is needed really to make this a success.
I've got another one now. I'm quite keen to move on to the workshopping bit, so we might have a minute or two at the end for, well, we'll have some time for feedback and maybe a question. So as I alluded to earlier, I'm seeing this as an opportunity. We've got a new government and lots of newly elected MPs, some MPs that aren't newly elected, and I think now is the time to be really building up relationships with them, spreading ideas about what horticulture could do to meet various really knotty problems that we're facing as society. And hopefully if we can sow those ideas and cultivate them and build those relationships, in a year or 2 or 5, we might start to have a harvest of the kind of policies that we're really, really wanting. But the work really starts now. And it's not just Land Workers Alliance, but various other organisations have been producing some really good materials. You might have seen the Soil Association's Homegrown report, which came out this summer. And then yesterday, Joe Hunt spoke about the report that CSA Network have produced about the economic viability of CSAs. So we've now got some really quite good publications under our belt to draw from. We're going to be having a strategy gathering of representatives of all these organisations, so the Soil Association, OGA, CSA Network, LWA, and all the usual suspects on the 9th of October. But what I wanted to do in the second half of this session is to try and get you thinking about some of the knottier problems, because we're trying to sell this idea of how organic and agroecological market gardens can help address health issues and get people eating more vegetables. They can increase biodiversity, they can address climate change by sequestering carbon in the soil, they can attract people into horticulture and hopefully train people up so they become skilled. But there's also the issue of that a lot of farms are really struggling financially, and there are issues of burnout. and it makes it sometimes a bit of a hard thing to sell, because, and I've been really worrying about this. But then I also, in thinking about this workshop, was thinking, well, actually these financial problems are due to the systemic issues that we're trying to address in the first place. So it's a real chicken and egg situation. It's not our fault that they're struggling financially, and actually it's not just small scale growers that are struggling. A lot of the really large scale ones are also struggling, as the Riverford Get Fair About Farming survey showed. So in a minute, if you could get into groups of 3 or 4 to talk with people about, if you were selling the message of what agroecological growers can do to your MP, what would be the top 3 points that you would be wanting to make? And if they were asking you awkward questions about viability, how would you address that? And I mean, I realise that in the 5 minutes that we're probably going to have for this exercise, you probably won't come up with all the answers, but if it can get you thinking about it so that you go away from this workshop and have your planning brief for MPs and the thoughts of hosting a farm visit, I'm hoping that you'll go away from this sort of really thinking, well, how would I really sell this idea, and how are we going to increase the number of agroecological growers? Because this is something that we really all need to be doing together, and we need to be joining together and not having barriers between our different organisations if we're actually going to get this revolution going. So if you can spend about 5 minutes talking to 2 or 3 people around you, and then we'll have an opportunity for not full feedback, but a few people to feed in points that have come up before we close. So here's a chance to just chat amongst yourselves for 5 minutes. Got a second mic, so if to enable everyone to hear, if you are speaking, if you could come up maybe and say what you came up with. So has anyone come up with any startling or not so startling points that they would want to make? What are your 3 points that you would use to really land the message about the benefits of agroecological market gardens?
Food security.
Sorry?
Food security.
Okay, can you come up?
So we're in quite traditional rural West Wales.
Hold it close.
Our MP is Plaid Cymru, and she's been a massive enabler through our local food partnership, through our Sustainable Food Places food partnership for our county farm project, which is funded by the Levelling Up Fund. But we have to be quite careful about the narrative, so we tend to steer away from environment, and because it's very politically contentious at the moment in Wales for nitrate vulnerable zone legislation, all sorts of challenges for the intensive animal protein production sectors. So we tend to talk about food security, health and well-being, and local economy. So those are our, those are our safe, happy places that we can.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Anyone else want to come up and share what they were talking about? Brilliant, thanks Rue.
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to have Pete in our group who's been involved in negotiations with DEFRA, and we're saying that what the DEFRA priority looks like, flood, river catchment, flood mitigation, water quality are key issues that we need. Health and resilience, which includes about basically us being resilient to external shocks, which could include anything around food security, external energy issues, with local supply chains to step in.
Brilliant, thank you. Anyone else would like to come up? What did you talk about in your groups? If you'd like to say your name and...
Matthew Adams, Growing Real Food for Nutrition, CIC. So I'm exploring food quality. So my point is around the topical news around the NHS being broken, as we know, and the need for reform. So it's an opportunity to create an area called Food as Medicine. And so exploring food quality, I believe there's a way of potentially measuring food quality. I think it's good to investigate that. It can end up questioning how we understand a lot of things about the way we grow our food. But essentially, if I was talking to an MP, I think I'd be mentioning the huge cost to the NHS and the potential of using food as medicine. And one little case study comes from America. The cost to treat obesity or diabetes using food would cost around $18,000. So that's where you supply a family with fresh food 365 days a year, as opposed to £200,000 on prescription medicine. So it's a very simple economic argument that supports good food. And if we were able to measure the quality of that food, then it would help to separate that which is low quality and doesn't create health against that which is high quality that does create health.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to trip you up. Anyone else? Yes. Come on up, Ed.
Ed. Commentary.
Hold it right up.
Okay. Apparently, I'm not very audible. I'll try not to shout. So we had a chat about sort of how to.
Hold it up really close.
We had a chat about how to about this renaissance. We talked a bit about how the allotments are as well. Pesticides. And the allotments, very important. Mustn't forget about them because people can grow their own, be more connected, and that doesn't mean they can't volunteer at a community farm either. They might be learning things at the farm they can apply on the allotment, trying things at the allotment they can suggest to the farm. You know, there's symbiosis. And then for allotment gardeners, many of whom have saved seeds, sometimes rare varieties have been shared by amateur growers, and have been really useful for professional growers as well. And so the grassroots, I guess, was what we talked about more. Although then, in terms of an overall sort of, the benefits of horticulture in every town and city and village, I guess the climate change benefits are, you can group them, I suppose, can't you? And the environmental benefits are really key. And I guess it's been nice to see more evidence-based research, sort of people looking at things like that growers can get involved in as well. That citizen science is that are practical within the constraints of time, and like putting up VAT microphones in. There's a study we compared with a neighbouring wheat field to see if we had more bats as an indicator species for insects, and therefore also birds which eat insects, and sort of some of that biodiversity. So this citizen science being a benefit also from lots of small scale operations where you've got growers perhaps that have got that pluralistic values and care about the environment too. That's an obvious benefit as well, isn't it? And then for the resilience and food sovereignty and even security of people being able to access locally produced, highly nutritious and healthy food, helping in all sorts of ways that you can quantify and some that you can't quantify. And that's important too. And then feeding into but it seems that the key stumbling block that struck me with the chicken and egg situation is not having the money to employ more staff, and I think funding from local governments and national governments for the trainees would be so useful for so many growers. Definitely, in sort of building a network for knowledge sharing as well.
I think I need to probably wind it up. Thank you. Thank you very much for feeding all this in, and we will try and bring all this together, and when we're having our strategy discussions in a couple of weeks, feed all this in. There were a couple of hands up earlier, which I didn't have time to invite. Sos, you had a question.
Hello there, I'm Sos Stopes, and I am the co-chair of the English Organic Forum and also policy advisor with Organic Farmers and Growers. And there isn't enough time to say what I wanted to say, so I guess I won't say it. But I would ask that the English Organic Forum is part of your strategy thing on the 9th of October. And I will say why. It's because if I was to ask my local MP a key question, it would have to be based on the evidence for the fact that there is this latent pool of enthusiastic people who can and could grow. And I don't think we have that evidence. And I'm working up a specific project proposal with the Organic Growers Alliance to try and work with the English Organic Forum, the whole sector advocating for organic farming, to try to understand how we can get more organic veg grown on organic farms. There's an answer you could say. We need to work out both sides of the equation. It's a chicken and egg. The chicken or the egg that we need is to get more evidence for the fact that there are eager growers waiting to go. So for example, what's happening in Wales, or what the Soil Association is shortly going to launch with through the Innovative Farmers, is something to get more entrants onto organic farms. What we need to be able to say to our MP is that this is the reason that we can say there is this latent pool of enthusiastic people, which I actually question. I think it's often said, it's been said here, and I think we need to get clear what's the evidence for the fact that there is this latent pool of great people. But thanks very much for organising the session, B, and also for your really good report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so, yes, I mean, I hope having had discussions, it's sort of got a few thoughts going, and that you'll go away. Please do come and help yourself to a MP's planning briefing if you feel that this is something you could take to your MP and write to them about. And also, please do use our resources online. We've got a whole campaigns toolkit now, but it's got things like the how to organise a farm visit for MPs. And we're really, really eager that these should be used, because it's now really up to us to get these messages to land. And I think there's a matter of urgency in getting these messages to land, because the government is going to be beleaguered on all sides by different people asking for different things, and we've really got to make our messages clear and shine out above everything else, really clear and compelling. So this is not the end, this is just the beginning. So hopefully we'll be coming back this time next year with some wins. And I mean, actually there already have been some wins. The fact that farms of under 5 hectares can now apply for the basic payment scheme is a significant win from all the campaigning all our organisations have been doing for years. So although it does sometimes feel like we're just campaigning and not getting anywhere, actually we are getting somewhere. We just need to get even further. So hopefully you can go away from this with hope and also enthusiasm to carry on the good work. So thank you all for turning up.
Thank you to B, Tony and Joe for that. That was really great. And yeah, at 3 p.m. we'll have Michael Kennard from the Compost Club on methods for effective composting. So come back for that. Enjoy your lunch.